A friend recently challenged me to tackle The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This is a tricky one to talk about for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's about Jesus of Nazareth, who's central to my life. It's been attempted 4 times, and each has fizzled before the complete 7-novel series could be filmed. And none of the adaptations are anywhere near perfect. Now, I know I talked about that in my As You Like It review, but unlike As You Like It, where the text was what knocked me for a loop with that play, my first encounter with C.S. Lewis was seeing the 1979 film adaptation in elementary school. The only films that had such a strong effect on little Paul were Star Wars and The Hobbit, so I have to respect what the filmmakers were able to do. The animation is simple and often beautifully stylized, sometimes even elegant. It was directed for American television by Jose Cuauhtemoc Melendez. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, it's because this native of Sonora, Mexico is better known as Bill Melendez, 6-time Emmy winner and nominated for 13 more, and director of one of the best cartoons ever made, A Charlie Brown Christmas. He voiced Snoopy in that special and many others afterwards. And he's still being used as the voice of the beloved Beagle long after Melendez's passing in 2008. This dude worked on little-known cartoons like Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, Fantasia, Bambi. If the animation in his Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe seems rudimentary, I think about my joy at the tree decorating scene in Charlie Brown Christmas and how stupidly it just works. 4 kids, one of whom is a real stinker, discover a fantasy world inside of a wardrobe in the labyrinthine home of an old professor. The novel briefly mentions that their stay at the professor's is a byproduct of the World War II London bombings, a background that's completely ignored in the animated film, gets breezed over briefly in the 1988 live-action series, and for some reason is hit pretty hard on the nose in the 2005 Disney version. Having your home bombed as a kid makes a difference. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is an example of British mid-century children's literature, which grappled with changes to English life before and after the 2 world wars. Lots of time travel in those books, looking forwards and back to see how life had changed. A couple favorites of mine were Tom's Midnight Garden and Charlotte Sometimes, which The Cure turned into no less than 3 different songs, which just goes to show how heavily the Great Generation's imprint was on our tiny Generation X minds, which were similarly grappling with life before and after the Vietnam conflict. I expect millennials may similarly wrestle with 9/11 and the decades of war that have followed. The siblings stumble into a world that is marvelous, full of talking animals and mythical creatures, but it's also frostbitten in the hands of the White Witch, the self-declared Queen of Narnia, who wants it to be always winter and never Christmas. Through sheer bribery, she wins over the younger brother Edmund, who she then immediately trusses up and whips. It's a pretty awful fate while his brother and sisters are enjoying cakes and tea with a family of loyal beavers. But then comes Aslan, a giant lion who is basically Jesus, powerful and meek, the opposite of the White Witch's authoritarian regime. Terrifying yet terrific.
Then he isn't safe?
Safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. But he's good.
The crux of the story is Aslan's decision to sacrifice his own life in exchange for the traitor Edmund. While his little sister Lucy is the heart of the story, Edmund is her opposite number. Both are audience surrogates. Lucy is innocence and love. Edmund is the part of us that we wish wasn't there. They never did a follow-up to the 1979 cartoon, which is odd because the animation seems like a perfect medium for Lewis's fantasy novels, and the final scene all but promises sequels.
Only the beginning of your adventures in Narnia.
In 1988, the BBC produced 3 ambitious TV series, summing up 4 of the novels using puppets, animation, and some really bad costumes. It works aside from the beavers, wolves, and poor Reepicheep, the valiant mouse, but it's astounding to me that a 3-hour TV series covers the same ground as a 90-minute cartoon, when both productions remain faithful to the short novel. Disney later made a near 3-hour film, which is also pretty faithful, had oodles of star power with Liam Neeson, Tilda Swinton, and Jim Broadbent, but feels fairly empty, like the White Witch has nobody left to tyrannize over. In an era where everyone was looking for the next franchise, Disney charged ahead with a surprisingly good adaptation of Prince Caspian, one of Lewis's least successful books, but a cracking good adventure film. And then The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which makes a great episodic novel, but doesn't really work so hot when banged into conventional plot structures. The incompletion of each of these series can be put down partly to how unfilmable some of the books are. The bizarre prequel, The Magician's Nephew, or the apocalyptic Last Battle, but if they made Prince Caspian work, there was hope, even if The Horse and His Boy, a favorite of mine, has thinly veiled anti-Muslim stereotypes in it. Going back to the 1979 version, it's not perfect. The White Witch screams most of her lines, as she does in 1988 as well.
We must be off!
I'm grateful for Tilda Swinton imbuing this avatar of satanic legalism with a bit more subtlety.
If it's a war Aslan wants, it's a war he shall get.
I'm still a little baffled by the White Witch meet and greets at Sleeping Beauty's castle in Disneyland when the movie came out, but here's the thing about holy texts. They're complicated. They challenge us. They refuse to get nailed down. Aslan is a snapshot of one part of Jesus, the selfless hero. Lewis kept the message simple and direct. Aslan would die just for Edmund, but he would still kick evil's butt. This is much simpler than the Gospels, but it is children's literature after all.